All right. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate you joining us for the inaugural presentation for this season's Habitat and Wildlife Keepers North Carolina Wildlife Federation chapter meetings. We've got a treat for us tonight with Jon Storm presenting. For those of you who are new to us, HAWK, that is Habitat and Wildlife Keepers. We're the Matthews chapter of the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. Started 15 years ago by some dedicated environmental gardeners. And we're always pleased to show the things that we do. It started right here at Squirrel Lake Park, which, before I forget, we have got a Kids in Nature Day coming up next month. And this garden looks fantastic in this picture. It certainly is gloriously, and we could certainly use some help. October the 10th, 9 a.m., we're going to be doing a volunteer day to get the gardens ready for the next week's Kids in Nature Day. So please do come join us. Reach out to us, email us, message us on Facebook, however you'd like. Our website's got our phone number as well if you'd like to call. But do come out and help us out. Like I said, we started 15 years ago and started right there at Squirrel Lake Park. And the National Wildlife Federation certified the park as a certified habitat. And this is how you could certify your own properties or your balcony or a big flower pot as a certified wildlife habitat. You know, there's only 4 items necessary. There's food, water, shelter, place to raise young. And the 5th one is to use chemicals sparingly. Obviously, the challenge for so many insects with so many chemicals being sprayed and sold at the big box stores. So you can certify your backyard, your front yard, your balcony, your place of worship, your business, and we would love for you to do that. I did talk about Kids in Nature Day. That's coming up on October 16th, and we certainly could use some volunteers for that. I'll talk a little bit more about some other volunteer efforts, but if you go over to bit.ly /kind 2021 Kids in Nature Day. So that'll take you to our Sign Up Genius page and help us out, whether it's just setting up some tables or manning a booth or helping us give families a little hike through Squirrel Lake Park. That would be fantastic. There's something for everybody, no matter how little or how much you'd like to help us out. We can always use your assistance, that is for sure. So please sign up to be a volunteer at that bit.ly sign up genius link right there. And of course, we always enjoy our sponsors, the town of Matthews. We've been doing this for a number of years, and the town of Matthews certainly helps us out with our Kids in Nature Day and our Earth Day event. Earth Day is April, and our Kids in Nature Day is like a mini Earth Day in October. I had already mentioned the Squirrel Lake Park garden party. Come help us out on the 10th at 9 o'clock at Squirrel Lake Park. Help us do a little bit of weeding, a little bit of mulch spreading. Our leadership team meets once a month, and we have all sorts of various duties that we take care of. Certainly taking care of getting presenters and organizing it and presenting, as well as doing the different volunteer functions at our events. Matter of fact, it's not on this, but I want to congratulate my team at HAWK for, after several years, we've had a grant for a chimney swift tower, and it finally made it to fruition. It's a big project with 20-foot tower over at Halsey Purser Park here in Matthews. So It's not dedicated yet. It literally just got built on Friday morning. Everything went in, concrete's all set, and we're going to get signage put up there. So if you've never gotten a chance to see Chimney Swifts, we did put the message out for Chimney Swifts that are looking for a new home. They've got a nice brand new deluxe accommodations over there at Halsey Purser Park. So if you get a chance, where the community garden setup is, it's in the field along the tree line over there. But those are the kind of things that our leadership team does: put together programs, education. We certainly do presentations to other organizations as well about certifying their backyards as certified wildlife habitats. We are always looking for folks to help us when we do get back in person. We're certainly looking forward to that. For refreshments, we always have folks that bring cookies and snacks and that kind of thing, as well as any other aspect. Unfortunately, Matthews Live as well this year got canceled, but there's certainly something for everybody to help out. So please reach out to us and come help us out, make this organization even better than it is. You know, this time of year, we're getting into fall. I'm sure that John's going to talk about some of the insects and the birds and the flora and fauna, but the idea of the leaves coming down out of our trees do make a big effort to leave the leaves, because many of these insects overwinter in leaf litter. So do our wildlife a big favor, because all of these are bird food. You know, if you did not get a chance to hear Dr. Doug Tallamy present to us beginning of last season, you owe it to yourself to hear it. Enjoy this book, Nature's Best Hope. It's absolutely fantastic. Talks about bird food, and it's not really as much seeds as you would think it is. It's nice, soft, squishy caterpillars. So the more caterpillars you can grow in your property, the better. This is a fantastic book, as well as he has a new book all about oaks. I believe it's called The Nature of Oaks. It is fantastic. Look for it wherever you buy books. I know that one of our sponsors, Birdhouse on the Greenway and Wildology, they have these as well. And I'd like to thank both Birdhouse on the Greenway as well as Wildology and Williams Subaru. They've been our key sponsor for our Earth Day celebration for years, and we're very much looking forward to being able to see them again and seeing all of you again in person in April at Squirrel Lake Park for our Earth Day celebration. In any case, our next meeting is going to be all about majestic elks. If you haven't had a chance to hear them bugle it up, we've got a great presentation coming up next month. Justin McVeigh is going to go ahead and present on these. They are back in the Great Smoky Mountains. They've been reintroduced. They're doing well. Their populations are growing. We're going to learn all about them in October. Tonight, we're in for a treat with Jon Storm. He's got such an impressive bio that I had to jot it down, and I want to make sure I got it right. He's a professor of biology at the University of South Carolina Upstate, where he teaches introductory biology, ecology, and evolution, and comparative vertebrate anatomy. He's a lead author of the Field Guide to the Southern Piedmont. Make sure to, if we don't get to it, ask him a question about this, because it is a free ebook that covers more than 700 species in the Piedmont of the Carolinas and Georgia. He also manages the Southern Piedmont Natural History Facebook page. If you don't follow him, you definitely should. It is chock full of great information, very similar to what we're going to get tonight, on all sorts of creatures that are making their way out at that time when he posts. His research interests include small mammal ecology and animal behavior. His work has been featured on the Discovery Channel, NPR, and in the New York Times. So without further ado, John, if you would go ahead and unmute yourself, as well as share your screen.
Okay, I am unmuted.
There you go. All right. Well, we're looking forward to it. Welcome, John.
Let's see. So I'm trying to get to the share my screen. Here we go, share screen. There we go.
Very good. We can see it.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. I'm glad you could be here tonight. What I'm going to talk to you about is the wildlife, the plants, the animals, the insects, the fungi, slime molds even, that you might find in your own backyard during this time of year. So it's what I call your backyard nature. So let's imagine here that you're getting ready to go do some fall planting, and you're going to go out to the North Carolina Native Plant Society's fall plant sale. If you're not sure when that's occurring, go to their social media page, go to their website, and you can find the listing of where they have fall plant sales in various parts of the state. So I highly encourage you to do that for whatever state you might be living in. But you go out there and you buy some plants, you're getting ready to plant those here in the fall. And as you do that, you look down in your mulch and you notice something interesting. You see these little cups down there in the mulch, and they have these little striations on the inside, and you think, wow, those are like little bird nests or something down there in the mulch. And that appearance is a very good descriptor of what they are. It's even one of their common names, the striate bird's nest fungus. Striate meaning it has these striations, these lines on the inside of those cups. And they're very small. You can see from the size of the penny here, they're easy to overlook unless you look for them. But once you get that search image, you'll probably see quite a few of them. They're really quite common if you look on wood mulch this time of year, even in a parking lot at a department store. You can look down close and find it in the wood mulch in those little islands. So what's the purpose of this bird's nest? Is it just something cute to see out there in the mulch? Well, not really. It's their way of reproducing, spreading their genes to other new habitats, getting their offspring to new areas to live on with their life. So what this bird nest structure is the fruiting body, this reproductive structure of the fungus that looks like this right here. And what it's designed to do is to disperse these little mushroom-like periodoles on the inside. How that happens is you wait for rain. And so as a raindrop falls down, it hits the inside of that cup, the little bird's nest, and out fly these little periodoles. They kind of look like little mushrooms, little toadstools. And those contain the spores. But wait, there's more here. It's like your little advertisement for a product, because that little periodole is going to shoot out, and it's got a little thread that's going to grapple on to plants, because that thread is sticky. So once it hits some vegetation, say a weed or some other plant around where that bird's nest is, it sticks onto it. And so it goes around and around the stem, kind of like a tether ball. And now it's up above the ground, up in the air, just waiting for a nice windy day to catch those spores. And so along comes the wind, that spore sacs up in the air, and whoosh, off go the spores, dispersing them to new habitats, new mulch far away from the parent, and then it grows up into its own new fungus. So we can see what that looks like in super slow-mo here by watching this video. This comes from Mary Beth Hassett, a professor at Miami of Ohio, who studies this fungus's reproduction. So what you're going to see is a simulation in the lab of little raindrops falling down out of a pipette, hitting that splash cup or fruiting body, the bird's nest, and then out fly these periodoles carrying the spores. So here it goes. And there it goes. There goes another one. and off they go to each side right there on that one. So that gets the periodols out after a raindrop hits. Next, you've got to get that little sticky thread to wrap around vegetation like a tether ball. And we can see that happening right here. So here comes our raindrop. Up goes the periodol, sticks onto that vegetation and wrapping around like a tether ball on that grass. Now that periodol's up in the air and the wind can blow those spores off to new habitats. What's that going to do? Well, it's going to grow into these hyphae, these little fungal threads that makes up a fungus. And it's the way that fungi live most of their life, just living off in the soil, decomposing mulch, doing their fungus thing until the time is right, the temperature is right, the rain is right, to send up those fruiting bodies again. And then you see them above the ground, getting ready to have the raindrops fall down, splash out the periodols, and the life cycle continues again. So look for those around wood mulch, even islands and parking lots. You can find striate bird's nest fungus and other bird's nest fungi. So you're out there looking to plant your new native plant. You just found these really cool bird's nest fungi, but then you find something that's maybe not so cool. You see, you've got this neighbor dog that you're not too fond of. He's been leaving some gifts around your yard, you think. So you're looking at this little patch of your mulch, and it looks like he's left you another gift. But maybe it's the dog's fault. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's something else. If we look at that gift you're blaming on the dog, it might look something like this. But it's not necessarily vomit from the dog, although that's what it's named. This is actually something different called dog vomit slime mold, because that's kind of what it looks like, a pile of dog vomit. But it's not your dog. You might have also seen it looking like this, called a scrambled egg slime mold sometimes, because that's kind of what it looks like. It's a pile of scrambled eggs out there in your mulch. So what is this stuff if it's not coming from your neighbor's dog or your neighbor dropping their scrambled eggs in your mulch? Well, it's a slime mold. Historically in science, they were oftentimes just grouped in with the fungi in kingdom fungi. However, that's not who they're most closely related to. They're actually a protist in kingdom Protista. So closely related to the Euglena or an amoeba that you might have looked at way back in high school biology class under the microscope. So they're actually closely related to that amoeba, not a fungus. They've got this complex life cycle. I'm not going to go into the details of it, although there will be a test at the end. Just kidding. But here's the life cycle of that dog vomit slime mold. What you typically see is this stage called the feeding plasmodium over here on the right. They can have that yellowish color. It could be orangish, it could be kind of brownish, and it could also just be kind of clear, kind of like uncooked egg whites. But you tend to notice it when it gets yellow. That's a structure called the feeding plasmodium. And at that stage, this slime mold is this big bag of lots of nuclei, and it's out there feeding on bacteria and fungi in your wood mulch. Eventually, it's going to start to maybe not have the best conditions to grow and to live, though. So it might be running out of food, or maybe it's getting too dry in that mulch. So that slime mold's kind of thinking, how do I get out of this mulch? Well, the way it does that is that feeding plasmodium that's yellow or orange develops more and turns into what we call an ethelium. This is their reproductive structure that has the spores. You might have seen these out in your mulch as well. They're the ones that you step on and this kind of purplish black cloud comes up. Those are the spores of this slime mold. So those blow off in the breeze. They get dispersed by raindrops falling onto them, land on somebody else's mulch, and then they've got slime molds living in their mulch. Most of the time when you've got them, you don't even know it's there. They're down there just feeding on the bacteria in your mulch. And it's only when they start to get this big feeding plasmodium that's yellow that you tend to notice it. But they've probably been there for quite a while. Now, you might be wondering, is this something bad for my mulch? Is it bad for my plants? It's not doing any harm. So some people might take a fork or a shovel and toss out the plasmodium or run a hose over it. You're not going to get rid of it. It's just there, part of the life in your mulch. Just enjoy it. Once it's been there for a day or two, it's probably going to go away and you're not going to see it again for a while. So enjoy it while it's there. It's just part of the life of your lawn. So off blow their spores, and they live in somebody else's mulch, perhaps. So you've found these bird's nest fungi, you found these slime mold that apparently aren't your dog's fault. And so you start to dig around in your mulch, get ready to plant those new great plants you got at the native plant sale, when you notice something else. An eastern worm snake. Have you ever seen these before? So you dig away the mulch, the pine straw to get ready to plant something. And these are a common snake to find under that leaf litter. That's one of the reasons you always want to dig away the mulch before you take that trowel and dig in hard, because you don't want to accidentally kill one of these worm snakes. They are called a worm snake because that's what they eat, but it's also in a way what they kind of look like. They're generally in the range of 10 to 14 inches long, and they've got this kind of brownish to grayish body with a pink belly. So they look something like this right here, completely harmless, not venomous at all. You can pick them up and look at them. They're not going to bite you. They're not going to hurt you in any way. So very friendly to teach young kids to hold snakes properly and such. What they will do, though, they're not going to bite you, but they might poke you with the tip of their tail. So they've got a sharp little point on the end of the tail. And what they do as likely an anti-predator strategy to try to get free from this big predator grabbing them is they'll tap you and poke you with that sharp tip to their tail, kind of as if they're saying, hey, let go of me, don't eat me, I'm going to poke you. So they do that a lot, but it's not injecting any venom or anything harmless or anything harmful to you. What they do for their lives is live under that mulch, occasionally come out on warm nights, but spend most of their life under mulch, under logs, down in the soil, eating earthworms, insect larvae, slugs, all sorts of invertebrates down there in that mulch. So if you find one, it simply means you have a healthy ecosystem there in your garden with lots of prey for these worm snakes to feed upon. And they're pretty common and a fun little snake to find. As I mentioned earlier, they kind of have a worm-like look to them as well, to eating the worms. And you can see that with that pink belly on their underside there. Now, at this point, you've had your excitement with snakes, but things start to get even more exciting, maybe to the level where you're like, okay, I like snakes, but maybe not this snake necessarily. You want to keep your distance here. We've come across now our most common venomous snake that we're going to find here in the Piedmont, the copperhead. So at this point, you're kind of backing off thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to plant those plants later on this afternoon. Just let the copperhead mosey off, do its copperhead thing, and I'll come back later. So while you're thinking about what to do, you start to ponder, what do I want to do while I wait for the copperhead to go away? And it's at this point that we enter into the choose your own seminar part. So much like the choose your own adventure books that you might have had as a kid, I always do my talks as a choose your own seminar, where you get to decide what we're going to do next. We've had this little roadblock coming up with the copperhead in the way. So we could either say, oh, no excuses, let's keep gardening, we're just going to do it, copperhead or not. Or maybe you're like, I'm not such a big fan of copperheads. I think that's enough excitement. Let's just go take a hike in the woods. So what do you say here? Any thoughts on which one you want to do? Should we keep on gardening or go hiking? I think everybody's muted, so I will pretend I hear you. And let's see, how about, oh, I think I heard it. I think I heard take a hike. Yep, definitely heard that. We're going to go on a hike off in the woods and see what we find there. So off we go. Hi. Oh my God, what in the world is going on here? We're stuck in Return of the Jedi. What is going on? Oh my goodness, we're at the Sarlacc pit. Some hiking spot is exactly right. What in the world are we doing here? Well, this actually relates to what we're going to talk about next. And you might be certain to think of, oh, I know what he's going to go into. Ant lions. You ever seen these before? Little conical pits out in the sand. It's almost like somebody took a little conical ice cream cone and pushed it down into the sand. If you've ever wondered what those are, they come from the larvae of ant lions. They can be 1/2 inch in diameter or 2 inches in diameter to even more than that. But at the bottom of each of those little conical depressions is the larvae of an ant lion. So that larvae looks like this little guy on the left here. It's got these big, long jaws to grab prey, and it just hides out under the sand at the bottom of that pit, like you can see here on the bottom right. That's the larvae at the bottom of that cone. What it does is build this funnel, this cone in the sand, by backing up and just walking backwards in circles until it builds this funnel. And then it also uses those long pinchers to move its head kind of like this and flick out that sand. After doing that, it builds the little funnel, and then it just waits, sits and waits for an ant or a spider or some other small invertebrate to walk past. And some of those little small ants don't pay attention to where they're going, and they fall into that pit, and it's got all that loose sand on it, and they slide down in. And that's when the ant lion starts to take its jaws and it flicks up sand at that ant, causing it to slide even more until eventually that ant falls down to the bottom, and down come those jaws, grabbing the ant, and it pulls it down in below the funnel and eats it. After it eats it, tosses the carcass out of the funnel and waits for the next ant to come by. So that's the larvae. The adults look like this little damselfly at the top right image, very much like a damselfly, but with these kind of somewhat clubbed antennae. That's the adult antlion. But most of its life, for most of the 2 years or so that it lives, is spent as this larva developing under the soil, waiting to grow into that adult that feeds a little bit, mates, and then lays eggs with the females. So what does this look like? Well, here is a video I made of an antlion catching an ant. So we've got the conical pit in the top there, and I'll play this video. What you're going to see is the ants kind of walking around on the sand, and one of them falls into that pit and then gets grabbed by an antlion. Oops, missed my clicker point. There we go. So it fell in, hasn't gotten grabbed yet. And there it is. Antlion's grabbed it, pulling it down below the funnel to eat it, suck out all of the ant juices, and then throw the ant carcass back out to the side of the funnel and grow up into this damselfly-like adult antlion. So doodlebugs is another common name for them that you might have heard before. Those are the antlions, many different species here in North America. So we continue on our hike. We've seen these antlions along a sandy patch of our walking trail. And now we're kind of coming into an open spot, maybe a power line area with this sunny edge. And you find these beautiful flowers opening. The maypops, or purple passion flowers, opening up in the early mornings to give these beautiful displays of passion flowers. So the way you can identify this plant is it's got this nice trident shaped leaf, the little 3 points coming off of it. And then even more distinctive are those just outrageously beautiful, very distinctive, very unique flowers of purple and white and yellow on the purple passion flower. So these flowers open up in the mid-morning, and they typically flower for just 1 day or maybe 2 days, and then they're done. So they've got a very short time period to get pollinated by a butterfly or by a carpenter bee, typically. But they open up really quickly. It's a fun process to watch through the magic of time lapse here. Here is one that I took in my garden of some maypops opening up last summer. So I'll play this and you can watch them opening up. The total time is right around half an hour or so on this. So there comes one, here comes the other. So now they're opened up, waiting for those butterflies or a hummingbird or a carpenter bee to come by, get some of their nectar. But from that plant's perspective, the reason they're giving out that nectar is to attract them in to get their pollen, transfer that pollen to another plant, or bring that pollen of another plant to them, and then lead to fertilization and the production of fruit, and more importantly, the seeds in that fruit. So what they want to have happen from the plant's perspective here is this process, pollination. The most common pollinator that I see on purple passion flowers are carpenter bees. You can see one of them right here on this purple passion flower, along with the reproductive parts of this flower. So the part right here, we've got 3 of them on the flower, are these bulbous-ended stigmas. This is the female part of the flower, where you've got this sticky little stigma end that's going to pick up the pollen on that carpenter bee. And that pollen, hopefully, from the plant's perspective, came from another plant, and it's going to transfer the genes, the sperm of that other plant, to the stigma of this female part of this plant. Also, with that flower is the anther. This is the male part that's got a little yellow bag-like structure full of pollen. And that carpenter bee, as it forages for nectar in this purple passion flower, it's going to get rubbed all over by that anther, get covered in pollen, and then transfer it to another plant's flower. So you can see how effectively that works right here. That carpenter bee is going in deep for nectar, and then there's that anther rubbing right along its back. It's almost kind of like one of those little shower pads that you would use to clean your back and scratch your back. It's just the anther of this flower, though, spreading that pollen all over the body so that it can transfer it to that stigma of another plant's flower. And that would then lead to fertilization and the production of fruit. Now, this time of year, in late summer, early fall, you've got both of these processes going on. You've got the flowers nearing their end period, but they're still flowering. And you're also starting to get some of the mature fruits just starting to develop here. When that happens, they get this kind of wrinkly, yellowish look. And that's when you know that they're mature and they're ready to pick. Typically, what I look for besides that light yellow color and the wrinkliness is I'll smell them. And if it has this kind of tropical flavor. I know it's mature, it's ready to harvest, and then I take some of those on home and use those to cook up. So here's what a mature one that got fertilized looks like. If you rip it open, it's got these kind of gelatinous covered seeds filling up most of the fruit. So this in general isn't a fruit like an apple that you're going to just chow down on and eat. It's full of a lot of seeds. And these seeds are not edible, unless you get maybe the domestic kind where they are softer and more edible. But this is one of the wild native types here where you don't really eat the seed part. You just suck off that gelatinous part if you're looking to eat it as it is right here. But at least what I tend to do is I take that fruit and you put it into a strainer and you just kind of mash those seeds around. This takes a while to do, but after you mash them around in that strainer for a while, you get all that gelatinous goo off of the seeds, and then you've got the seeds left behind. The gelatinous goo falls down into the bowl, and now you've got the part that you want to use to make a jelly or a jam or some other sort of tropical flavored dessert for your kitchen. So that's the passion fruit. Some of you may have learned them as a maypop. And the reason they're called that is that as they're developing as a fruit, kind of before they get to the stage where they're all wrinkly, if you were to step on one, they pop. Hence, children like to play with them, slam them down on a driveway like my kids like to do, unfortunately, jump on them and have them go pop. That's where the maypop name comes from. But they're also edible, and they're a very tasty, tropical flavored type of fruit, the maypop. Now, as you're looking at those maypops, looking to maybe harvest some of the fruits here in late summer, early fall, you notice something else on those leaves. You notice some of those leaves are chewed up. When you look at that, you find these orange caterpillars that are covered in black spikes. So they look like kind of a dangerous caterpillar, something you wouldn't want to mess with. You can tell that both from the spikes, but also the coloration of it. These caterpillars have what we call an aposematic coloration. One of those big words you can throw out in conversations to impress your friends, like, oh, it's aposematic coloration. Everybody knows that, right? Also high word tour on Scrabble if you want to throw that out sometimes. But this aposematic coloration, what it is a warning to predators, hey, don't eat me, bright orange color, I'm toxic, don't want to mess with me. That's what they're advertising here, is this danger to the predators of, hey, better leave me alone. I'm spiky, I'm bright orange, don't want to mess with me. That caterpillar is the Gulf fritillary, named after the beautiful butterfly that it turns into. And they're very common on passion flower vines, both the purple passion flower or maypop that we're talking about here, but also the yellow passion flower, Passiflora lutea, which is also native here to the southeast, just not as flashy and as large of a flower, but they also feed on the leaves of that plant. As the Gulf fritillary develops later on, it turns into this beautiful butterfly. They're very common in yards this time of year, very common on roadsides where you've got the purple passion flowers or yellow passion flowers. And we get probably around 3 generations per year here in the Piedmont of the Carolinas, even more if you went further down into the coastal plain around, say, Augusta or down into Florida, where they're going to be active year round. But what you can find them doing this time of year is going around to lay eggs oftentimes. And they lay those eggs on the leaves, on the vine, and pretty much any part of that purple passion flower plant. So I've got a video showing that process right here. You're going to see a Gulf fritillary fly in, and it's going to hang out on this plant, deposit an egg, and then fly off. And then we'll look at what those eggs look like. So here it is coming down to land on one of the tendrils, this kind of coiled up string that the passion flower uses to grab on to a shrub and grow up into the air. So there it is. It's laid its little egg on that tendril, and those eggs are teeny tiny. If you watch these butterflies long enough, you'll see them fly up to leaves. They stick their abdomen down like we see this one here, and just in a second or so, they fly off. And what they've done is deposit an egg on that plant somewhere. Here's one where it went inside of that tendril. So the one that we saw just a second ago landing on that coiled up tendril, here's the egg it laid. Down deep in the coils of it, nice and safe, where a predator isn't as likely to find it. That's the egg of a Gulf fritillary. And this egg is teeny tiny. I've actually got one of them showing here on this leaf on the lower right. Do you see it? It's teeny tiny, just like the size of a small pinhead. It's right there. So small you probably can't even see it. But if we zoom in to look at that leaf really close, there's the egg. It's kind of like this football-like shape with little divots all over. That's the egg of the Gulf fritillary that's going to hatch out this caterpillar that can grow into another Gulf fritillary butterfly, hopefully. So that's the Gulf fritillary. Look for them on purple passion flowers, on yellow passion flowers, very abundant in the summertime into early fall. So hopefully you're seeing those around your yard and on the hikes that you're taking. So we continue on our hike, and we're going to have a special treat here. We're going by a little woodland edge, and there's some pine trees there, and we come across one of my favorite snakes, the eastern hognose snake. Once again, another one of those non-venomous snakes that's fun to watch, and you don't have to be so concerned about keeping your distance. Now, you might be wondering, why is it called a hognose snake? Well, for a very good reason. It comes from the shape of that nose. They have a shovel-like nose at the tip that's kind of like the nose of a hog that the hog would use to burrow in the soil. It's just that the hognose snake has a similar structure. They use it to burrow in the soil and catch toads and other sorts of life that's buried down in soft, sandy substrates. That's why they're called the hognose snake. As I mentioned, they are not a venomous snake, and we can tell that by a few pretty easy ways. One of which is that this snake has round pupils. If we're talking a pit viper like a copperhead or a timber rattlesnake that we'd have here around the Piedmont, they have vertical slit-like, kind of cat-like pupils. Whereas on the hognose snake, that black pupil is round. That tells us not a pit viper, not a venomous snake that we have to worry about. In addition, it doesn't have the pits. It doesn't have those little thermal temperature sensing pits that a rattlesnake or a copperhead would have. So that can tell us from a distance very easily, not a venomous snake, just let it be, and it's not going to bother you, nothing to fear from this snake here. Now, these hognose snakes, they're rather good actors, and you can get that to happen by walking past them or threatening them in some non-harmful way. If you were, for instance, to stick your foot down next to one, it's probably going to coil up like this, and it looks threatening, but it's all a ruse. There's nothing threatening about it because it's not actually going to bite you or try to harm you in any way. But they'll coil up like a rattlesnake, and they'll flatten out their body to look kind of like a cobra. So if we look from above, you can see that flattening out of the body, looking kind of like a cobra, which leads to one of their other names, a puff adder. as they kind of puff out their body and have that adder-like look to it here. So that's the eastern hognose snake. This is their threat response at the beginning of feeling threatened. Now, if that doesn't stop the potential predator like a fox or a coyote or you from messing with them, they then take that to the next level. And if I can't scare you away by acting like something I'm not, I'll just play dead. The rationale here, I guess, if we personify it is, well, most things don't eat dead stuff. So if I pretend I'm dead, surely you're not going to eat me, right? So that's what the hognose snake does. I've got a video showing you that process here where they're flipped over on their back, belly up, literally acting dead, even with the tongue sticking out. And then if you try to right them and turn them over, they flip right back over, go belly up, and act dead. So here's our eastern hognose snake. Belly up again. Flip them over, back to belly up. See the tongue sticking out there, mouth open. So very good actors telling that fox or that coyote, that skunk, hey, I'm dead. You don't want to eat me. I mean, who would want to eat a dead snake? Come on, I can't be that tasty. So hopefully from their perspective, that works. It's also a reason never to play poker with the hognose snake. Although in some ways, maybe you do want to play poker with the hognose snake because you know it's all a bluff. They're just making it up. But you can see that that bluff very good here. Notice the mouth is open, the tongue is sticking out. They can even go to the level of popping capillaries in their mouth and blood will start to come out of their mouth. So they really take it to the next level with this display of, I'm dead, right? You don't want to eat me, I'm dead. Another level they can take it to is not only are they dead, but they really stink. So what they'll do sometimes is vomit up their last meal, which is what this eastern hognose did right here. It had recently eaten a toad, which is probably their most common food to eat. So out comes this toad, stinky, disgusting, smelly, and from the hognose's perspective, surely that's enough to keep you from wanting to eat me because I'm a dead snake covered in vomited up toad. Come on, you don't want to eat this, right? That's our eastern hognose snake. Woodland edges around farmyards, pastures are all common places to find them from spring through fall. And they're a common snake to find because they're active during the day. They're diurnal. So you don't have to go out at dark to find them. So at this point, we continue on our hike and we're pretty excited. We've seen a lot of snakes today, 3 snakes. That's a pretty good reptile day. We're a little, running a little low on the insects, but there's a little stick on the trail. And what do we find there? An eyed click beetle. So this is an eyed click beetle, similar to the blind click beetle that also lives here around in the Carolinas, but the eyed click beetle has a larger eye-like spot on its back, and it's got a more distinct white margin around that large eye. And that can distinguish the eyed from the blind click beetle for you, generally pretty well. They live around woodlands in hardwood or mixed forest habitats where their larvae feed on beetle larvae and such in that rotting wood. So you tend to find the adults around in those same types of habitats with rotting trees and hardwood and mixed wood forests. As I mentioned, they're called a click beetle. And if you've ever played with the click beetle, you know probably why they're called a click beetle and what they do to click. It's a fun thing to play with for kids if you look for some click beetles. So if you've never done this or didn't know what they do, what a click beetle will do is you put them on their back, like this one pictured on the top left. And as a way to perhaps get away from a predator or to get themselves back off of their back onto their legs, they click and flip themselves up into the air. Now you're probably wondering, how does a beetle flip itself off its back up into the air? Well, it has some pretty cool adaptations to do that. It does it through this little prosternum spine at the arrow on the top left. That spine sticks out, and it's got a little notch that it goes in when that beetle arches its back, like you see in the middle pane. When that happens, it starts to stretch out some of its cuticle, this exoskeleton of its body, and that cuticle has some elasticity to it. So it's like you're stretching out a rubber band, so to speak, or setting a mouse trap. Then when it lets that spine pop out, it clicks and it flips that beetle way up in the air, sometimes a couple of feet, flipping through the air, landing possibly on its legs, and off it scurries away, far away from that predator after it's flipped up into the air. So it can do all of this through that tension generated in that spine as it arched its back, and then it straightens out the body, and that elasticity flips that beetle up as the spine flips out of its little notch. The thinking for this, we don't have a really great understanding of why it does this or why any of the click beetles do this, but it's thought to probably relate to spooking a predator or getting away from a predator that's trying to come and eat it. If you think about it from the predator's perspective, if you're trying to catch this beetle and it flips up into the air and goes off who knows where and then runs away, it might be pretty hard to track it down, and they can get under some cover before the predator figures out what happened. So that's all fine and dandy. You probably want to see what this looks like. So here it is with an eyed click beetle. I did this with time lapse on my iPad a while back. And so here I've got one of those click beetles on its back in my hand. I'm going to put it down on some paper, and it's going to flip up to try to get on to its feet. And it does so pretty quickly after I lay it down. There it is trying to click already. Boop, there it goes. And off it walks away. So seen in slow motion now. Ooh, that was a great flip. I'd say gold medal on that. And off it walks away from that predator, off to safety. That's the click beetle. And you can do this with lots of different click beetles. There's many different species that you can find in your yard, some of them black, some of them brown. They're all over in woodlands and yards. So a fun one to catch and play with. If you leave out a black light at night or have a porch light on, they oftentimes fly into those as well if you want to try to catch some. So that's our little nature hike. We're going to come back to home now, I guess, and maybe think about planting those plants. But what I'm hoping this nature hike has done for you is given you some inspiration to go off and hike and learn about nature on your own. That's what I've tried to instill in my own children, taking them from very young ages off into the woods to explore whatever we can find out there in nature. As I did this, I oftentimes taught my kids the plants and the animals, the calls of birds that we would hear. And as I was doing that, I thought, for most people, they probably can't just walk around and say, oh, that's this plant. Oh, look, an elephant's foot. Oh, hey, that's a chickadee calling, and tell that to their kids. So I wanted to give parents an easy resource to share that knowledge with their kids, something their kids could play around with on a tablet and look at different local wildlife that they'd find here in the Carolinas and Georgia in their own backyard. And so that led to my inspiration of creating the Field Guide to the Southern Piedmont. It's based off of a book that I spent a lot of time looking when I was a kid, the National Geographic book, The Guide to North American Wildlife, which kind of ran the gamut of everything from plants to animals to fungi, seashells, anything you could find across much of the eastern North American continent. I did the same type of thing here with the field guide to the southern Piedmont, covering pretty much anything you're going to find, from spiders to plants to fungi, slime molds, insects, skulls and bones, sounds that you would hear. It's got a bit of everything in it so that you can learn about whatever it is you might be finding out there in nature. And I also wanted to make sure that it's free so that people can just use it from any socioeconomic background. So if you've never done that or looked at it, go to this website right here, uscupstate.edu/field guide. You can download it to your tablet, your phone, whatever you want to do, and just use it as a free PDF to learn about local wildlife. There are certainly much better applications out there nowadays with things like iNaturalist that can just hold up your phone and get an idea of what it is. But if you didn't get a picture, or maybe you want to figure out what was that thing I saw 2 years ago on a hike, this might be a good resource for you. Or just to flip through and learn about things that you're not looking at right now, but might remember or want to learn about and look for in the future. It's a good resource to do that. Another thing you might be interested in is my Facebook page, Southern Piedmont Natural History. Some of you have probably seen it before. What I do on that page is every day I write about something happening in nature within the Piedmont of the Carolinas at that time of year. So for today, I wrote about the white small flowered morning glory, which is blooming right now. You can find it on a hike through a river bottomland. And then tomorrow I'll write about, I don't know, whatever I think of tonight and decide to write about for something happening now. So check that out if you follow on social media and do that sort of thing. If you've got kids, or maybe you like to color yourself, I've got a coloring book that I put together with some students a few years ago on local wildlife. You can download it from the same website as the field guide. It's all meant to be anatomically correct and good quality pictures to color of the types of species we would find around here. So it's not just a generic mantis of some sort, it's actually what looks like a Carolina mantis that you can color and then read some information about what our native mantis is like. All of that's free. You can download the pages as a little booklet or full 8.5 by 11 pages and print those, color them to your heart's content. So feel free to check that out as well. Something I'm working on right now is with John Whitaker, who is the bat feeding expert for North America, on this book on what bats eat for agricultural and garden pests in North America, well, most of North America, the United States and Canada. I'll have this coming out pretty soon, and I'm hoping that it'll be a good reference for gardeners, for farmers, to learn about the good things that bats do, why we want to keep them around and have them as a free pest control service around our farms and gardens. So it profiles many of the pests that bats eat here in the United States and around in the Carolinas. So with that, I'm glad to take any questions that you might have, and I hope you enjoyed the talk, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
John, that was fantastic. I always love a nice deep dive into creatures that you've seen in the garden, and you just never knew. The click beetle, I've found plenty of them, but I've never had the opportunity to play with one and see it actually do that 7 flip click over. So that's fantastic. I really appreciate it. I'm sure everybody loved it. If you guys have any questions, put it in the Q&A, and we'll go ahead and get John to answer. I know I've got a couple of questions for you. The caterpillars that we have, the notion is, of course, that caterpillars are critical because they're number one source of food. They eat plants at a tremendous rate. You know, when you see these pests, and here's a good example on this page right here with your bat page, the bat book here. You've got a couple of caterpillars doing some damage. You know, what can you encourage folks to do if they see caterpillars on their plants, on their prized roses or whatever it is that?
Well, for many of the caterpillars that you're going to get on, say, a tree, they're going to do some damage. They're going to eat some of the leaves, but they're not going to do so much damage that it's going to kill the tree for most of the caterpillars that you're going to be talking about. One of the most common ones that people find around here in the Piedmont, the Carolinas, and is very noticeable, leaves lots of frass on the ground, are the oak worms, like the orange striped oak worm. And they will maybe eat all of the leaves off of the branch, but look at that tree the next year and that red oak is doing just fine. So for many of them, they will start to eat the leaves maybe later in the year when the plant's been doing lots of photosynthesis. They're going to lose those leaves pretty soon anyways. And it's not doing a level of damage that's actually going to harm the tree. But what it is doing throughout that summer, throughout that spring, with those early instars of the caterpillars especially, is it's providing a very important, very critical food source for baby birds. So if you look at any of the songbirds in your yard, be it a chickadee or a cardinal, what they're going to be feeding their young are not seeds from a bird feeder. They're feeding those young chicks caterpillars and other soft invertebrates, but caterpillars being a very important one. So if you want to have the birds at your bird feeder, you've got to have the caterpillars to develop and grow up those birds to be the ones that come to your feeders in the wintertime. It's all connected. You got to have the food.
That's right. There's no question. Matter of fact, this time of year, you see them falling out of oak trees, trying to cross driveways and streets and everything else. They're just looking to dig in the ground and pupate over winter, right?
Yeah, for many of them, they're looking to find a place to pupate, go into the ground and overwinter. And yeah, that's what they're looking to do. They may be looking for they might have fallen out and looking for a tree to climb up and start to eat some vegetation. But in general, if they're on the ground, they're looking for a place to pupate oftentimes.
You know, Janet asks about if you can give any more specific guidance about when and where to find click beetles.
Really, if you want to find some of those, I would put out a black light on a bed sheet or something like that, and they'll fly in pretty commonly to that bed sheet if you put a black light on it at night. And it's not going to take long to bring some. You don't want to do that a lot because then you're bringing in the insects who don't get a chance to mate. So don't do it like every night, but put out a white bed sheet, black light, and you'll get some of them to fly in. Or look at a porch light if you leave one of those on, and they'll fly into that as well. They're pretty common.
You know, normally we certainly recommend that folks try to keep their properties as dark as possible for exactly what you just described, right? For moths are attracted to the light and they don't do what they're supposed to be doing, which is finding a mate and making more moths, making, more caterpillars.
Yes.
But if you've ever, Janet, if you've ever participated in a moth night, North Carolina Wildlife Federation chapters around the state sponsor these pretty much annually, and it is a lot of fun. Just as John described, a sheet is set up. Of course, the professionals, instead of just a regular bed sheet, they have one with squares, a grid. So when you do take a picture of one that shows up, you can actually see the size of them based on the grid that's on the sheet. But that's it. They, of course, come to the light. You go into the dark part of your backyard and set that up on a sheet, and it's fantastic. All the different evening creatures that you find. So
yeah, things you didn't even know were out there. But, it's a lot of fun.
indeed, indeed. Well, if you guys are being a little shy and not type in questions, I've got plenty of questions of my own, but I don't want to monopolize us this evening. So go ahead and toss in there. I see a post talking about how much fun moth nights are, and that is very true. There's no question. If you have an opportunity, we may very well have one at the end of our season. You know, our chapter meeting, our monthly meetings go from September through May, sometimes into June. And so sometimes we'll go ahead and have a moth night as our last presentation for the season, and we'll go do that at one of the local parks. So Mullis family is asking, is it okay to put feed out for the birds yet, or are we still worried about spreading disease? You know, the Audubon Society has certainly encouraged folks not to put birdseed out because of this mysterious disease that's afflicting birds. They're concerned about the birds congregating. So not only are we supposed to be socially distancing, but we're encouraging our avian feathered friends to go ahead and socially distance too. So don't congregate around bird feeders. Do you know if that's been lifted?
The specifics on that, you'd want to check with your particular region. I have not been following the details of that very closely with which areas they're still saying to not put out the feed, because I don't feed at my feeders in the summertime anyways. But check with your local Audubon Society and you could ask them. That would be my recommendation. Or check the National Audubon Society. They might have a map that shows you where they're saying don't feed versus it's okay to feed. And that would be the reputable source to go to for your particular area.
Yeah, you know, planting the plants that attract all of these insects is the best bird feeder there is. Yeah. And one of the biggest epiphanies that I had when Doug Tallamy came in person here about 6 years ago and did a presentation for us was the notion of an empty bird feeder and a full bird feeder in terms of your plants. So oaks have 400 different insects that they go ahead and host. And your crepe myrtle, even if it were the same size as an oak, hosts a couple, and that's it. So it's more or less an empty bird feeder by way of the oak having so much diversity as far as insect that will eat it and clearly not kill them. They do just fine. So encouraging your neighbors not to freak out every time they see a nibble on their plants. That's actually a good thing. Just like
that's
John
a good
said.
thing. And everybody likes to see the songbirds. They like the birds coming to their feeders. But if you want to have them coming in, you've got to have baby birds, which means you need to have those caterpillars to feed them. So the oaks, as you said, are a great one. They're the #1 type of tree to plant around this region, a red oak or a white oak. But you could also plant something like a black cherry, which produces a lot of caterpillars as well. So they're a good one to do, especially the young trees with the more succulent leaves. That's where you tend to get a lot of those caterpillars. So very valuable food source for birds coming from those oaks and black cherries.
Matter of fact, we did have a mention here that we did not have a problem in Charlotte with the birds. So it's safe to put up bird feeders now per Cornell.
Okay.
So that is fantastic. Question of, can you speak to the variety, abundance, location, et cetera, of snakes in the fall?
Well, this time of year, you've still got snakes active. You can find a lot of our snakes throughout the year, even in the wintertime on a warm day, although they're not going to be as common as spring through fall. But this time of year, this is when you've got young being born for, say, copperheads and many other snakes starting to have the young hatch out. So you want to be careful about where you step and looking for those baby copperheads with the yellowish green tail. They will be going into hibernation in rock ledges and under logs here in a couple of months or so. but still, our snakes are still out and active. Copperheads might be starting to get a bit more active during the daytime this time of year because it's not quite as hot. They tend to be in the summertime more active at night when it's not quite as hot, and then in the spring and fall be a bit more active during the daytime when it's warm and not quite so cool, like it starts to get in the evenings in, say, late September, October.
Now, for you folks that are attending tonight or listening on Facebook in the future, in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, we have a great organization, the Waterfowl Rescue, Carolina Waterfowl Rescue, and they will come and get snakes from you if you've got a snake in your garage or something like that. They'll come and rescue those snakes, so copperheads are certainly on the list. Of course, you feel free to find my name and number for all the black snakes and those kind of things. I gladly have those all over the property here, so I'd gladly adopt them from you. But if you're concerned about copperheads in particular, I can appreciate that sentiment. There's absolutely no reason to destroy that creature, particularly when you have volunteers that'll come and safely remove that and take them and relocate them far away from your home. Now, in your area, if you're not in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, do look for organizations like that that don't destroy, but rather relocate them. You don't want them in your garage. I can appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think most areas have a group that does that. You just have to look around on Google and you can find that for rattlesnakes and copperheads. It'd be nice to just leave them there, let them live their lives, but if it's that or kill them, certainly moving them somewhere else is the better option.
Yeah, and I can tell you from personal experience on numerous occasions that copperheads, even though they're formidable by way of their potential venom, they are probably the most easygoing, chill snakes there are. So they really take it easy. They're not interested in chasing you or coming after you. I've had a couple in my yard that have been very close to me, and once I notice them, I thank them for all their other efforts, and I just slowly back away. They're not interested in us. So unfortunately, our dogs may not know to leave them alone because, of course,
Yeah.
Dog's nose chases every smelly thing there is. So anyway, John, I really want to thank you again for coming out on Zoom tonight and having this presentation for us. Fantastic. And for all of you, if you have not gotten a chance to see where his field guide is at the Upstate EDU website, you can certainly see that again on our recording. It'll be on our YouTube page. You can also see the recording on our website, hawkncwf.org. And I see a lot of chat messages saying great presentation. Thank you again, John.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. I'm hoping that you enjoyed it as well and learned something also.
Indeed. Thanks again. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you next time.
Have a great night.
Take care.